What's going on, guys? Today I want to tell you about something exciting. I finally made some masterclasses for y'all. Okay, so I made two masterclasses, not about spirituality yet, but rather about personal development. What are the core principles of personal development using what we can learn from spiritual literature? Okay, so I think this is much more important to the masses, to everybody, to a wider audience than getting into the spiritual stuff yet, because they do actually coincide, these two things, these ideas of personal and spiritual development. Many people don't know that. So this is kind of my goal with these two classes, is to show the underlying system behind personal development, and the fact that we can source these principles from spiritual literature. They do work together. They can work together. Okay, they don't have to be separate. They just have different scopes, different goals. So for y'all, people who follow my channel, people who don't, you're still going to benefit from these classes, even if you're more interested in like the spiritual side of things. Okay. And for people who don't follow my channel, who aren't even interested in spirituality or religion or anything like that, like you're going to want these. You're going to benefit from these. You don't have to believe anything to benefit from these. I'm not advocating that you believe anything. I'm literally just saying, hey, here's some things I've studied. I have a huge experience with practicing Buddhism, studying tons of different traditions and paths in general. For example, even Christianity. I use the entirely sort of like polar opposite genre of spirituality. I mentioned that I've studied that in depth simply to demonstrate the scope of my unbias, so to speak, the lack of my bias in my approach, I guess you could say, or the extent of my worldliness, you could say. So anyway, yes, you don't have to believe anything to benefit from these classes. It's very matter of fact, just like Stoic philosophy, just how we see that has had an increase in appeal here in America, maybe since Ryan Holiday introduced it, right? Because of how it's literally just life wisdom, right, guys? It's wisdom for leading the best possible life. You don't have to believe in a deity to do that. You don't have to believe in a deity to get down with the matter of fact principles that are going to benefit you. Okay, right? So that being said, I think that's a good intro here. That being said, the first class, this gives you what I did with this one, and I've been meaning to do this for a long time, ever since I saw the genius behind it, studying Buddhism. It gives you a philosophical framework for how to do personal development in the first place. So rather than just being like some vague idea, like, oh, personal development, I'll get around to fixing myself up, like now, eventually, right? Like, it just sounds like some vague thing. Like, you watch videos on YouTube, you just read books, and it just happens. You just go about it, right? So no, actually, we can approach it from in a much more powerful manner. And what I did with this first class is give you an actual underlying structure for how personal development can be approached, how it can occur in the first place. Okay, so I designed this. I don't know that there's anything else out there like this. I believe it's first of its kind, to be honest. But I use Buddhist principles to do it. Okay, so what I touch on is, first I get into like the difference between personal and spiritual development, just to like start you guys off. Then I get into the feedback loop known as Namarupa, or using the principles of Namarupa. So attention, intention, perception, how there's a feedback loop of these qualities, these basic mental qualities that everyone has, irrespective of your tradition, your spiritual tradition, how these underlie the basics of building a skill in general. And so here, the skill we're developing is our mind, right? So I get into skillfulness as a governing principle for this process. We want to cultivate positive, efficacious actions, and so that we get the results we want in life, right? So we want to work towards that, and we want to stay away from unskillful actions, ones that bring about negative results in general. Okay, so we talk about that. We talk about the three roots of unskillful action. What are you actually doing? What's going on in your mind to actually like make you like take actions that don't have positive results in the first place. It's important to understand the mechanics of that. Okay, the goal. What goal are we working towards with personal development? Well, rather than the kingdom of God, rather than self-realization, rather than nirvana, we're working towards self-actualization. Okay, so we can steer all these things towards that. And then last, I touch on appropriate attention. This is a Buddhist concept. Basically, what you're doing is you are perceiving the events unfolding in your life with a perspective that actually is productive. It's productive to your success. Right, so steering ourselves away from states of sorrow and despair and towards actual productive mental states that we prefer and that get us good results, okay, in general. Right, so that's masterclass number 1. Masterclass number 2, now we get into not the framework, the underlying framework for how personal development unfolds, but rather wisdom teachings to help us enhance that process. Okay, so the wisdom teachings here specifically are, I am describing the underlying mechanics of how our minds generate stress and suffering, states of stress and suffering in the first place. Right, and so by stress, what do I mean? I mean, like, anything from depression, apathy, boredom, just lack of fulfillment, right? So kind of baseline states that we don't prefer up to, like anxiety and fear and anger, literal suffering, okay? So it's a whole spectrum of that. And for this, we tackle the Buddhist teaching of the Four Noble Truths, okay? The Four Noble Truths are actually a great template for personal development in general. It literally describes like a fourfold template for what we're doing, what we're seeking with it. Okay, so I start off describing like how that works with the Four Noble Truths. And in particular, what we're focusing on is the first one, the truth of stress. The truth of stress is actually defined as 5 clinging aggregates. It's this mysterious term that I get into, but basically clinging, attachment. That's what is actually, the stress is actually composed of. So I delve deep into the mechanics of clinging and attachment, how we do that within our minds, what we're doing in our minds to generate stress for ourselves. And it's important to understand this so we can actually see our psyche clearly. It goes from being like murky water, right? Looking into a murky lake into a clear lake where you can see the bottom. That's the benefit of teaching on this, of understanding this, of hearing this teaching, right? So I start off with, after that, I get into what's called the 5 categories of phenomena, the 5 khandhas. And so we're re-perceiving our reality in terms of their basic components. So form, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. We're viewing ourselves in these components to help start this process of seeing our psyche more clearly so we can see what tricks it's up to, how it's causing stress for ourselves, right? So the 5 khandhas, I explain all the mechanics of how our mind does that. How does our mind actually use those components to create stress for ourselves? I elaborate on all those mechanics, the mechanics of attachment to identity, labels, and outcomes, how that brings about stress for ourselves. And what's after that? And then, and then I close with what I call the 3 gateways of stress. It's kind of just more of an elaboration on the specifics of how that can occur. Okay. So I think we'll leave it at that. Now, here's the thing. So if that sounds appealing to you, here's the thing. You also get, with these classes, you also get a PDF download of my presentation, my PowerPoint presentation. That's the style I've done these with. So, it's a presentation. I've got my little face in the corner, just like you see with all master classes these days. So you get a PDF download of my presentation where I have all these notes that are going to help you review after the fact. You can rewatch the videos, of course, but it's good cliff notes where you can kind of scroll through and remind yourself of the teachings, maybe contemplate them easily without rewatching the full thing. Okay, and you also get 2 well-written articles with each one that kind of help enhance the message. They add to the message of each one. So for the first one, I get into inappropriate attention, which is the opposite of appropriate attention, right? So that means, what is the mind doing? What is the mind doing? What is the mind doing? What is it attending to that brings about unskillful action in the first place? And for that, we elaborate on what's called the 5 hindrances. These are They're going to obstruct, they're painful mental states. They're going to obstruct your progress in general. And they're going to make you bring about unskillful actions, get negative results, right? So the second article for the first class is about critical thinking. How does critical thinking help our process of personal development? Why is it integral? It's not an option. It's something we need, actually, for the process. Class number 2, article on the principle of permanence. That's right. So I made a non-denominational approach to the idea of a permanent foundation to reality, right? So in Buddhism, that's nirvana. In Hinduism, we call it Brahma or Brahman, right? The kingdom of God, all these different terms, the absolute, a permanent, unchanging principle underlying reality. So I elaborate on that in a nice non-denominational way. Then we also get into the second article, which is the 3 marks of existence. What are the 3 defining characteristics of this manifest reality? If there's a permanent principle, then what's going on with this manifest reality? What characteristics define it? Okay, so the law of change, for example, that's one of them, impermanence. Okay, so if you guys are interested, I'll leave a link to that below. I hope to see you there. I hope you enjoy the content. I hope you get, I hope it gives you a solid foundation for building your own practice, your own personal development, and even enhancing your spiritual development. Okay, so these teachings have been a long time coming. They've been a personal passion of mine, a personal passion for starting point for bringing these teachings to the world. So, yeah, go check that out. Give that a shot. And let me know if you like it. All right, peace out.